What is going on, Raider Nation? It is JT coming at you with another RaiderCast breaking news episode. Today, the 53-man roster has been, the initial one at least, has been revealed, and the players that have been cut, traded, whatever, are gone, and the players that are in are, some are surprising, some are not. The only reason why it's not surprising, maybe for me, is because not to brag or anything, but my predictions were 48 out of 53 correct. So pretty proud of that, pat on the back for me. So some of these moves were not surprising, but they still, some of the ones that weren't surprising were well, it still happened. It's still crazy to hear that someone like Alex Leatherwood being cut, especially with a $9 million dead cap hit. That's a big one. That's a doozy. Going into this year, after this whole offseason, we didn't have a lot of cap space left. We had, a lot considering the time of year, but we didn't have a lot. So I guess cutting now while we have some, I think it was 21 million before today, and then after today, I think it's around 12 million probably after with the Leatherwood cut. But still, I guess, that just shows how bad he was. Our O-line is considered to be one of the bottom in the league, and the fact that he was cut, not even traded, all 31 teams said, I'm good, to Alex Leatherwood, 17th overall pick from 2020. Another one of Gruden's mistakes gone, Mayock's mistake gone. He no longer can hurt us at right tackle anymore. But a lot of people complaining or talking about how, Alex Leatherwood, he was put in a bad position. He's supposed to be a guard, not a tackle, which I completely understand, and that definitely makes sense. However, at the start of this offseason, you had Mayock, Ziegler, and McDaniels talking about how they're giving him a shot at the position he was drafted at, which is not right guard, it's right tackle. They gave him a clean slate. They didn't look at what he did last year. They said, can you prove to us this offseason that you are worth starting at right tackle? You are worth keeping on this roster. And he didn't do it. Whether it was a confidence thing or a talent thing, he couldn't get it done. There was definitely some talk, when Thayer Munford got, a start over him, and Alex Leatherwood was down to the third team all of a sudden in practice. It looked like he was kind of, lost confidence at the podium. He wasn't super confident in saying, oh, it's fine, whatever. Reporters noticed, and even people who were watching noticed, he did not look happy. He did not look confident in himself, which could be why he just didn't perform how he was expected to. It might be a mental thing. I'm not going to ever claim to know what a player is going through or thinking. So this is just my observation as a third party. I'm not claiming that this is true, but from my perspective, and I would seem from most people's perspective that it could be a confidence issue. It could be a mental thing, and maybe a fresh, clean team, new everything, maybe a new position as well as right guard will do wonders for him. And I wish him all the success in the world. I hope he does well wherever he goes, but he did not work out for the Silver and Black. He's no longer part of the Raiders. So it's just another one of those Gruden Mayock mistakes gone. Another Gruden and Mayock pick that was also sent away today to Arizona was Trayvon Mullen, which was much unexpected. People, I guess, were saying, I think it was Ian Rappaport that said he was actually going to be released unless they found a trade partner, which we obviously did, because he was traded to the Arizona Cardinals for a conditional 7th round pick, which can turn into a 6th round pick if he plays a certain number of snaps or whatever. So this is another storyline going into the season. We play the Cardinals week 2, so we can see what Trayvon Mullen does on the opposite side of the ball to Derek Carr and the Raiders offense. But this was more surprising. I was not expecting us to trade him or release him at all. Maybe an IR, he would be put on, the IR you can get back, so he would be on the initial roster, but then put on IR or whatever, because he was still hurt. for most of the offseason. He came back a week and a half ago, and I guess they just didn't want him anymore. I guess they weren't either happy with how he played or just didn't want the risk of the injury occurring, and they were set at what they had with corners. I'll get to that later on as I talk about the 50-man roster, but looking at our CB room, especially from the outside of, or being a Raider fan or being outside the Raiders organization, you will be like, all right, you're really rolling with Anthony Averett and Rocky Sin and Nate Hobbs as your three, and you're getting away Trayvon Mullen, who's a relatively talented CB. From my perspective, we're getting rid of an injured, relatively average CB. With no knock to Mullen, I hope he does well, except when he's not playing the Raiders. But he wasn't anything outstanding. He wasn't anything crazy good. I think we could get the same amount of work from Anthony Averett as we could from Trayvon Mullen. But I still wish we had Trayvon Mullen just for the depth. But it is what it is. I guess they didn't like him, so they wanted to get rid of him, and we got something out of nothing, basically. So that's a positive, in my opinion. But moving on from talking about Trayvon Mullen, we also have some other things I want to talk about, some other, surprises or interesting moves that was also made today that I would specifically want to talk about. And one of them is we have 4 undrafted free agents on the final or initial roster, I should say. And those are Sam Webb, Isaiah Polamau, Luke Masterson, and Darian Butler. So it was very interesting to see 4 undrafted free agents make the roster. And at this point, we might have a better 2022 undrafted free agency class than we did a full entire 2020 draft. I mean, at this point, we might have 4 starters from this draft alone, and we might only have 2 from the 2020 draft still on the team. So that's pretty crazy. But they all earned their position. They all earned their roles. The only one that was super interesting to me was Polamau, just because we didn't hear a lot about him. He was kind of a quiet player. We heard more about Darian Butler and Luke Masterson and Sam Webb than we did Polamau, but he made the roster, so obviously they saw something in him. But this is a move that I can see being very much flexible, especially the Polamau move. He could definitely be moved around to the practice squad if we pick up a veteran safety that was dropped or anything like that. Maybe they just didn't want to risk him going away in waivers because maybe there was something on film that we didn't see or whatever. I don't know. But I don't see him. I mean, if he makes the 53, I'm not going to be mad. That means that he's something good because I trust Patrick Graham. But I don't see him making the final 53. I see him being on the practice squad for sure, and maybe adding a veteran safety or bringing back Darius Phillips or something like that. But to skip over one thing for a second, talk about the Phillips since I brought it up. Darius Phillips was cut, which I thought was interesting because everyone thought he was a lock just because of his special teams ability. He wasn't a super great defensive corner, but when you go down the list of corners, he played well enough to not be a liability or super liability if he was called to play corner, but he was mostly there for his special teams, which he was very good at. So that was kind of a surprise cut. Everyone had him as a lock. I don't think anyone saw him being cut, but he could make his way back, like I just talked about. But then we have Jacob Hollister on IR. Are being moved to, he's gone for the season. His injury that he had at the start of August and throughout the preseason and offseason and training camp is, bad. And it's not, he's not doing well, I guess, which, sucks because he definitely is a very solid tight end, especially a tight end 3. But this means that Jesper Horsted made the final roster, which, again, I'll talk about later. But so good for Horsted, but definitely, obviously sucks to see a player go to IR, especially season-ending IR. And then something else that was interesting was Amik Robertson is staying on the roster. Not something I predicted, but a lot of people were thinking it was going to happen. And you know what? Maybe he earned it. Maybe he deserves it. I didn't see anything that really wowed me from him this preseason, not anything new, but maybe he'll just be exclusively a nickel corner, a nickel back, a slot corner, guarding those slots, which is fine for him. That is a good role for him. He definitely can't play the outside to a reliably Goodwell. He can't play the outside reliably well enough to make a roster, but he can play the inside well enough and consistently enough to make a roster. So I think he'll just be a specialist corner at this point. Probably if like Avery is off the field and they have a Hobbs outside who can play both inside and out, they'll put Robertson in the slot. Or if Arcusin's off the field to rest and they have Avery and Hobbs, they'll have on the outside, you have Robertson on the inside. Probably something like that will end up happening, as just predicting off the top of my head. But that's really all I have for like insane moves or surprising moves or interesting moves. Let's actually talk about the players that were released. I'm going to switch over to my screen share. Let's take a look now. So we waived Alex Bars, who is a guard, Curtis Bolton linebacker, Ike Brown corner, Bryce Cosby corner, Quinterio Cole safety, Cole Fotheringham tight end, Chase Garbers at QB, Alex Otherwood, who's a guard / tackle, Jordan Meredith at guard, Bemidele Alasani at tackle, Dylan Stoner wide receiver, Myron Tagovailoa Amosa at defensive end, Zach Von Valkenburg at defensive end, Austin Walter running back, and Isaiah Zuber wide receiver. And then you also have us releasing Keelan Cole, Haranis Grasu, Matthias Farley, Darius Phillips, and Kyle Pico. And then obviously, as I talked about, Jacob Hollister to IR. A lot of these players up here I can see making back to the practice squad. I really want to see Bolton and Ike Brown and maybe even Bryce Cosby making it back. Chase Garbers is almost a lock to come back. Even Bamidele Alasani should hopefully come back because he is definitely a developmental tackle. Could turn into a pretty solid starter with some obviously some development and practice and stuff like that. So definitely a quintessential practice squad player. And then one of these defensive ends I should see make it back. I hope we have Isaiah Zuber back because he can play defensive back and wide receiver, so that's kind of fun. Austin Walter should also make his way back as well. And from these guys, Haranis Grasu should make it back as well because he's a center. So it's always good to have a center in the practice squad just in case Andre James gets hurt and we need Dylan Parham to play guard, stuff like that. Just thinking super future. Knock on wood, hopefully none of that happens, but just a super future, maybe preparation type of thing. But yeah, those are the people that were cut. But let's take a look at the initial roster now. So we are finally looking at the official initial 53-man roster, starting with the quarterbacks, Derek Carr and Jarrett Stidham. No surprises there. Then you have, obviously this is not in depth chart order. This is just this is alphabetical order, so don't get worried that Amir Abdullah is being decided to be running back 1. But you have Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden, Britton Brown, Josh Jacobs, Jakob Johnson, and Zamir White. So we end up carrying 5 running backs and the fullback and Jakob Johnson, which a lot of people were debating if we end up keeping Britton Brown on the initial roster, which I predicted we would because he's too valuable to let go, as he could easily be scooped up by another practice squad. That's just how well he played this preseason. And then wide receivers, we have Devontae Adams, we have Mac Hollins, Tyron Johnson, Hunter Renfrow, and DJ Turner. Now Tyron Johnson, DJ Turner, obviously, especially DJ Turner, kicked Keelan Cole off this team with their big playability and their special teams ability. Same thing with Matt Collins with his special teams ability. Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow were locks from the beginning. But DJ Turner definitely played his ass off this preseason to make this roster, and outplayed him, and T-Billy outplayed Keelan Cole in terms of potential. And we also, want to go younger. Tyron Johnson's young, Hunter Renfrow's really young, and DJ Turner's also young. These two are a little bit older, but overall, I think they definitely want to go younger if they can, especially if the talent and possibilities are there for them to be really good, which DJ Turner looks like. I'm going to keep calling him DJ Burner. He's a burner, man. But looking at tight ends, we have Jesper Horsted, Foster Moreau, and Darren Waller. Obviously, these last two, not surprising whatsoever. However, you have Jesper Horsted making the initial 53, which he should stay as tight end 3, which is awesome to see. I predicted he would, and he definitely deserves it. I think he made some great contested catches. He had contested catches. He had some great run blocking and pass blocking abilities in the preseason as well. So he could definitely be a solid blocking tight end as well as pass catching tight end, and should have a couple touchdowns, I would think, this season. And then we have, for offensive linemen, we have Jackson Barton, or Barton, or I'm not sure how to say his last name. Probably just Barton. I'm just saying it really stupid this whole time. We have Lester Cotton Sr., Jermaine Illuminor, Andre James, Colton Miller, Thayer Munford Jr., Dylan Parham, and John Simpson. Illuminor winning that right tackle position from Parker Leatherwood. You have Thayer Munford, the right tackle of the future, as a 7th round pick. You have Jackson Barton being the backup left guard, right guard. He can swing to anywhere. Mostly the tackles, though. He'll be backup left tackle, and probably. Although we have backup right tackle right here, so he's left tackle, left guard. John Simpson, Dylan Parham. Parham's flexibility is very useful, so I see him being a backup for right now, and John Simpson starting. Although I predicted the opposite. And then looking back, I was like, that's kind of dumb. You want Parham to be the backup just because of his flexibility to play guard and center. John Simpson, left guard, Colton Miller, left tackle, and Andre James were all kind of like expected to be the starters. And along with Lester Cotton, his right tackle position was a battle, but Illuminor ended on top, so good for him. Just a year ago today, he remembered being cut 2 times in 4 days. And then he worked his ass off this offseason to make sure that he made the roster and wasn't just cut a bunch of times. So props to Illuminor for doing that. But moving on to the defensive lineman, we have Andrew Billings, Deshaun Bauer, Matthew Butler, Mad Max Crosby, Neil Farrell Jr., Cleveland Ferrell, Jonathan Hankins, Chandler Jones, Malcolm Coons, Bilal Nichols, and Kendall Vickers. So Kendall Vickers was kind of my surprise defensive tackle keepage person. I don't know what I'm saying, but I predicted Calapico. But Kendall Vickers, I was flip-flopping between the two. Ended up in Pico because he is more starting. He's started before and stuff like that. He's that veteran presence. But we have a lot of veterans, so why not get this guy in here? He definitely has some big play potential. He had played a pretty good preseason, so I'm definitely excited to see what he can do with some significant snaps going forward. For the linebackers, we have Jayon Brown, Darian Butler, Devon Diablo, Luke Masterson, and Denzel Perryman. Jayon Brown, Devon Diablo, and Denzel Perryman were very much expected. Luke Masterson, within this last week, was very much expected, although I talked about him even before last week, making the 53, and same thing with Darian Butler. Although I didn't predict him to make the final 53 because I'm an idiot, he made it, so I'm happy for him. He was my linebacker player to watch this preseason and offseason, so very happy that he made it. I think they definitely have some potential as rookies to even play pretty well, and then going forward I think they'll develop nicely into very, very solid linebackers of the future for the Raiders. And then you have safeties: Jonathan Abram, Duron Harmon, Trayvon Murray, Isaiah Palomau, and Roderick Teamer. So Teamer, special teamer, these three were the trio. And then Isaiah is someone that I was not expecting, but props to him. He had a pretty quiet offseason as a safety. That's kind of good. That means you're not making too many mistakes, so maybe he's just played very clean football that we just didn't really notice because there wasn't anything flashy. He just played some nice clean football, so good for him for making the team. And then you have Anthony Averett, Nate Hobbs, Amik Robertson, Sam Webb, and Rock Ya-Sin. These three are the starters for sure. Nate Hobbs had a great rookie season. You have Anthony Averett, who's coming off a very exceptional CB1 jump to CB5 jump to CB1 last season, and played really well. And then Rock Ya-Sin, who's a young, hungry, and should be really good for the Raiders as a man corner, really elite man corner. And then Amik Robertson, Sam Webb as backups. Amik Robertson probably playing the slot a lot, as I talked about already. And then Sam Webb probably being an outside. He played, I believe, mostly outside in the preseason, so that's probably where we'll see him if he gets any amount of snaps this season. And then moving on to the specialists, of course, we have Daniel Carlson, AJ Cole, and Trent Sieg. There was no questions about them. They were going to make the roster pretty much no matter what. But yeah, that's the 53. the initial one at least. Let me know down in the comments, or tell me down in the comments what you guys think of this roster so far. There'll definitely be movement in the next week and a half, because football starts, well, for the silver and black anyway, in about 12 days. That's insane. We're going to have Raider football back in just 12 days. We have the first Thursday night game in, I think, 9 days now. So this is awesome. Football is back, baby. We finally made it through the preseason and offseason. We are back to the regular season. It feels good. I know I'm hyped. I hope you guys are hyped. It's going to be a very fun season for the silver and black. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, leave a dislike if you didn't, leave a comment if you did, leave a comment if you didn't like it. Just call me an idiot, call me whatever. But don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Still on the road to 100, but I've made some subscribers up. And you know, subscribe if you want, subscribe if you don't. But I appreciate subscription. I always appreciate you guys' support. I appreciate you all. I love you all. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and peace out, Raider Nation.